There is a very specific kind of tiredness people don't talk about properly. Not sleepy tired, not I had a long day tired, not even sad exactly. It's the kind where everything starts to feel expensive. A simple conversation feels expensive, answering feels expensive, deciding what to cook feels expensive. And when you reach that kind of tiredness, people around you usually can't see it because you still look functional. You are still doing things, still answering, still moving. But inside, something has already started pulling away. That's usually where the sentence comes from. I can't do this anymore. Not because one thing happened, because too many things have been happening inside you without being named. So when these kind of thing happens under this sentence, there are usually core beliefs. For example, in today's video we are going to talk about three top and major beliefs. Belief number 1. If other people are managing life, I should be able to manage it too. A lot of people do not reach I can't do this anymore because one terrible thing happened. They reach it because they have been quietly losing to ordinary life. Not some dramatic tragedy, just normal life. The dishes, the noise, the repeated questions, the emotional messes, the tiny responsibilities that never feel big enough to complain about, but never stop coming either. And that creates a very specific kind of shame. Because when what's exhausting you looks ordinary, you start turning on yourself. You think like, why I'm reacting like this? This is just life. Other people have kids, homes, jobs, pressure and everything, and they are still functioning. So what's wrong with me? That belief is dangerous because it makes you argue with your own exhaustion instead of listening to it. You stop seeing overload as overload. You start seeing it as personal weakness. So instead of saying, this is too much for me lately, you say, I should be able to handle this better. And once a person starts talking to themselves like that, they don't get relief. They get harsher. They don't reduce the load, they reduce their own right to fail it. This is why the sentence gets so heavy by the time it comes out. Because it's not only carrying tiredness, it is carrying all this self judgment that came before it. Not just I'm overwhelmed, but I'm overwhelmed by things I'm supposed to be able to live with. That is a much lonelier kind of exhaustion. Belief number 2. I don't get to fall apart until everything else is done. This one is brutally common. A lot of people are not living as if they are allowed to have limits in real time. They live as if their feelings have to wait for their turn. The child first, the work first, the family first, the deadline first, the guest first, the money problem first, the mood in the house first, any practical thing first. And somehow, in the middle of all that, their own inner life becomes the thing that is always postponed. Not denied exactly, postponed. Later, after this, when things calm down, when the day ends, when the week passes, when this phase is over. But for a lot of people, that later never really comes because life does not pause and say, now it's your turn to feel what this thing is doing to you. So they keep going on while carrying reactions that were never processed, anger that had no space, sadness that had no time, resentment that had to stay polite, fatigue that had to keep being useful. And after a while, it all start mixing together. That is when a person begins feeling strange in their own life. Not fully sad, not fully angry, just full. Too full for one more request, too full for one more decision, and too full for one more need that is not theirs. And then the sentence comes. Because if your feelings are always the thing that has to wait, eventually they stop waiting quietly. Belief number 3. Even when I'm exhausted, I'm still the one who has to keep it together. This is the belief underneath a lot of invisible suffering. Some people are tired, yes, but more specifically, they are tired of being the one who still has to think when they are tired, still has to remember when they are tired, like still has to keep the day from falling apart even when they have nothing left in them. That is a very particular frustration because it's not just I'm exhausted. It's my exhaustion changes nothing. The work still needs doing, the child still needs tending, the messages still needs answering, that problem still needs solving, and the next thing still comes. So rest starts feeling fake. Not because rest is bad, because the brain knows it is temporary. You sit down, but you are not free. You pause, but you are still tracking. You lie down, but your mind is still standing. And that is where a lot of people start feeling something they can't explain properly. Not just tiredness, but resentment at being continuously required. Required by the day, required by people, required by routine. This is why I can't do this anymore often comes with more force than the moment seems to deserve. Because the sentence is not only about the task in front of them, it is about the unbearable feeling that no matter how depleted they get, life still keep reaching for them as if they have more to give. And that feeling that there is no real switch off, no real handover, no real place to put it down, that is where a lot of people finally break. Now, here comes the fracture point. What makes this sentence so heavy is not that a person is tired, it's that by the time they say it, they usually already know something they have been trying not to know. They know this is not about one bad day, not one bad week, not one difficult phase. They know that somewhere along the way, their life quietly becomes something they are constantly recovering from. That is the part people don't say clearly enough. Some people are not living their life, they are surviving its pace, surviving its demands, surviving how often it reaches for them, surviving how little space it leaves between one thing and the next. And because nothing looks dramatic enough from the outside, keep telling themselves it's manageable. But manageable is a dangerous word. A lot of things are manageable when you are the one silently observing the cost. That's why this sentence lands so differently when it finally comes out. Because in that moment, the person is not just admitting they are overwhelmed. They are realizing that they have been calling something normal only because they got used to hurting inside it. That realization is painful. Because now the question is no longer why I'm struggling so much. Now the question becomes, why did I keep calling this okay just because I was still doing it? And that is where the real crack happens. Not when the day gets hard, when the truth becomes harder to soften. So let's talk about how these beliefs form. These beliefs usually don't come from one dramatic lesson. They build quietly. Like you grow up seeing that life keeps moving no matter how someone feels. You notice that useful person gets appreciated more than the honest one. You learn that if you can keep things calm, smooth, functional, then people don't ask too many questions. You learn that being good often means not becoming extra work for anyone else. And slowly, without saying it out loud, you begin organizing yourself around that. You become someone who tolerates, someone who adjusts, someone who keeps the day from becoming harder than it already is. At first, it even looks like maturity. You are patient, responsible, practical, reliable, but underneath that, something else may be forming. You may be learning that your needs only count when they become impossible to hide, that your emotions are more acceptable when they are quiet, that your exhaustion is fine as long as it stays efficient. And once a person learns that, they stop checking in with themselves early. They stop asking, what is this doing to me? They start asking, can I keep functioning like this? And that shift is everything. Because once function becomes the standard, a person can be deeply unhappy, deeply resentful, deeply worn down, and still keep passing as fine. That is how these beliefs survive for so long. Not because they are true, because they are well rewarded. Now comes the confrontation. So here is the harder possibility. Maybe the problem is not only that life is heavy. Maybe the problem is that you have built your whole way of coping around staying available to what is heavy. You have become too cooperative with your own depletion. You know how to push. You know how to delay your feelings. You know how to get through the day. You know how to make the outside look mostly normal. That skill has a cost. Because a person can become so good at caring too much that they stop noticing how unnatural it is. They stop questioning the pace. They stop questioning the role. They stop questioning why they're always the one adjusting first. And that is where a dangerous kind of life begins. A life where the person is admired for how much they can handle, while becoming less and less present inside themselves. That is why I can't do this anymore. It's not always the voice of weakness. Sometimes it is the first moment of resistance. The first moment something inside says, I have helped hold this together for too long, and the cost is no longer invisible to me. That matters. Because many people think their breaking point means they failed. But sometimes a breaking point is just the end of self-betrayal becoming efficient. Sometimes it is not collapse. Sometimes it is the point where the lie stops sounding convincing. So now we talk about the real shift. So maybe the real shift is not learning how to become stronger. Maybe that has been the trap all along. Maybe the shift is learning how to stop measuring strength by how much you can endure without speaking. Maybe the shift is catching yourself earlier than the resentment, earlier than the numbness, earlier than the day when small questions feels unbearable, earlier than the sentence I can't do this anymore. Because the healthiest version of this does not begin there. It begins with much smaller truths. Like, this is wearing me down, this is costing me more than I admit. I am becoming someone I do not like inside this pattern. I need help before I become unreachable to myself. I cannot keep postponing my own experience until everything else is done. Those sentences may look smaller, but they are actually stronger because they arrive before the damage becomes your only proof. And maybe that is the deeper lesson underneath all of this. So, a person does not become wise by learning how to carry more and more until they finally break. A person, in my point of view, become wise when they stop treating their own inner life like the least urgent thing in the room. Maybe that is the real work, not waiting until the final sentence comes out, but building a life where it does not have to. So yeah, thanks for watching my video. If you like it, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your friends.